Hello fellow humans wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this video exploring the spread of coronavirus. Now, in our last two videos we looked at the number of cases and the number of deaths in various countries around the world, and these are the kind of statistics you hear every day in the news. In this third video we're going to look a little bit more detail at the number of cases in proportion to the population of each country. So this first chart here, we're looking at the number of cases per million. And this is going to focus on smaller countries with a population overall of less than 1 million. So this chart is running from March the 1st up until March the 20th. So it's the last 2 to 3 weeks of data. And all of this is coming from the World Health Organization. So we can see there the red line San Marino, blue line Vatican City, Faroe Islands, Iceland. Then we're going to have Liechtenstein and Andorra. And you might notice that all of these six nations, they have a low population of less than 1 million, and this chart is to demonstrate the importance of thinking about the population of a country when you look at the number of cases. So you can see the blue line there, it has actually the third highest number of cases per million in the world, but that's Vatican City, and overall it has a population of less than 1,000, and that is just one case. So this next chart is going to focus purely on countries with at least 1 million people in its population. So again, running from March the 1st up until March the 20th. And we can see on our vertical axis there, we have got cases per million. And that is running from 0 at the bottom to 500 at the top. First line there is China, which has a very straight line, and that's around about 56 cases per million. Now that peaked earlier, before March the 1st, that's why we've got that very stable straight line. The other countries here, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, Norway, Iran, we've got that steady upward curve, which is fairly similar for all of the countries there. The curve for Iran is not quite as steep. It's not got that exponential curve that keeps going up, but we've got to remember that the number of cases detected is always going to depend on the number of tests being carried out. So we need to keep that in mind as well when we're trying to make sense of this kind of information. You can see there Italy, the blue line, reaching 778 cases per million. That's nearly 1 in 1,000 people who have been diagnosed as having the virus. So that chart includes China plus the 5 countries with the highest number of cases per million at the moment. And we can see that out of those 5 countries, 4 of them are in Europe. So we can see that the center of the pandemic right now is in the European region, and there's a lot of people becoming infected in various countries around Europe. Now, this next chart we're going to look at is, instead of looking at individual nations, is going to look at regions around the world. So this is going to explore the 6 different regions that the World Health Organization uses to understand what's happening globally. So this chart again running from March the 1st up until March the 20th, and we've got on the vertical axis the number of cases per million, and that's running from 0 at the bottom to 100 at the top. So remember, the figure for Italy on the last graph was about 800 per million. So we can see here that the blue line, quite stable, that is West Pacific, so that includes China, Japan, South Korea, and a lot of those cases have kind of stabilized and the curve is no longer going up, whereas the European curve, the red one, is steadily climbing. Eastern Mediterranean as well, which includes the Gulf states, the Middle East, and some North African countries, is the yellow line, and the green line is North and South America. So you can see there, overall, if you take the whole population of Europe, there are roughly 140 cases per million people. It's also interesting to note the very low number of cases in Africa and Southeast Asia. Now, there's 2 ways to interpret this. It either means that the virus is not spreading there as quickly as in other countries, or it means that it's simply not being detected as much as in other countries. Now, this next chart is going to explore the number of deaths per million people. In the last 3 charts, we were looking at the number of cases, and now we are looking at the number of fatalities for every million people in the population. Again, we're looking at data from March the 1st up until March the 20th, and on the vertical axis, we've got 0 at the bottom and 50 at the top, so 50 deaths per million people at the top. First line here is Italy. Second line is Iran. Then we have Spain with the yellow line, followed by France with the green line, and then we've got the Netherlands, and finally Switzerland. Now, these 6 countries currently have the highest number of deaths per million people in the population. All of these curves have a similar kind of upwards trend. Obviously, Italy's is going up faster than the others, and the curve is also starting earlier. Spain is also rising quite quickly. The only slightly different one is the curve for Iran, which isn't climbing quite as steeply, despite starting a little earlier. And we can see at the end there, Italy with 67 deaths per million people in the population. This next chart is also going to look at the number of deaths per million, and again we're going to look at the World Health Organization global regions. So we'll look at all 6 regions around the globe, and this time the vertical axis runs from 0 at the bottom to 5 at the top. So we can see the big contrast there between some of the countries with comparatively high death rates and then the death rate across wider regions. So we can see there Europe, the red line, followed by blue, West Pacific, which again includes countries like China, South Korea, Japan. We've got the Eastern Mediterranean, the Americas, Southeast Asia, and Africa. And we can see there that the blue line has a fairly consistent number of deaths per million of about 2. Whereas in Europe, we're up to a point where 7 people per million have died as a result of the coronavirus. So hopefully exploring this data has put some of those figures into perspective. Whereas before we talked a lot about the high number of cases in countries like China and Italy, when we actually look at the number of cases in relation to the population, we see how serious the situation now is in some of the European countries, that their number of deaths per million has now overtaken China and other countries that were previously the focus of this outbreak. Thank you for watching. Please click subscribe and join me again for more videos exploring the data and evidence surrounding COVID-19. Listen to the advice of experts and stay safe. Bye-bye.